What do garbage men, dentists, and tax accountants have in common? They were all legitimate main event characters in WWE history, and somehow people took them seriously. WWE's evolution isn't just about wrestling. It's about how one man's business decisions created the most beautifully absurd entertainment empire in history. We're about to break down every major era and expose the calculated chaos behind each transformation. From the days when Bruno Sammartino held the title longer than most people stay married to the modern streaming era, where part-time wrestlers somehow became more valuable than full-time ones. Capital Era. Picture wrestling in the 1950s and 1960s as basically cavemen in tights, where everything moved at the speed of molasses and announcers spoke like they were narrating a funeral. The Capitol Wrestling Corporation started in January 1953, when Jess McMahon and Toots Mondt decided the Northeastern wrestling scene needed some organization. What they created was Wrestling's Stone Age, complete with slow matches and announcers who treated every body slam like it was world-changing news. Vince McMahon Sr. inherited this regional wrestling territory and faced a serious problem. The Northeastern market was crowded with established NWA promotions, and everyone was fighting for the same fans. McMahon Sr. needed to establish dominance in this mess, but he had to make predetermined wrestling matches feel legitimate while building a sustainable business model. This was happening in an era before national television, so reaching fans meant relying on local TV stations and word of mouth. The solution came in the form of Bruno Sammartino, a strongman who could carry the title for nearly 8 years straight. That sounds impressive until you realize that's longer than most Hollywood marriages last. Sammartino's first title reign became the longest in WWE history. It provided something the WWE desperately needed: stability. His matches were slow-paced by modern standards, but they were filled with drama as he faced opponents like Gorilla Monsoon, Killer Kowalski, and The Sheik. McMahon's genius was recognizing that fans wanted heroes they could believe in, even if the matches were about as real as a $3 bill. His business strategy was simple: control the booking, control the territory, and make sure your champion never loses, because finding a replacement was harder than finding a decent pizza in 1960s New York. McMahon Sr. worked hard to secure deals with local TV stations, significantly increasing the visibility of their wrestling shows. Broadcasting matches into homes was a game-changer that built a loyal fan base and established the company as a major player. When Sammartino's 8-year reign ended on January 18, 1971, it shocked the wrestling world. The crowd's reaction at Madison Square Garden showed just how much impact Sammartino had made. The transition from Capitol Wrestling Corporation to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in 1963 marked a turning point that allowed McMahon Sr. to take control of the Northeastern wrestling scene. He accidentally created a template for sports entertainment that his son would later use to conquer the world, just with more explosions and less hair. You think Sammartino's 8-year title reigns were crazy? Wait until you meet the son who decided that staying regional was for losers, and that what America really needed was a blonde-haired vitamin salesman telling them to say their prayers. Golden Era. The 1980s hit WWE like a freight train made of pure American cheese and pharmaceutical enhancement, transforming wrestling from a regional curiosity into a national obsession. What happened was simple. Vince McMahon Jr. took over the World Wrestling Federation from his father in 1982 and immediately decided that playing it safe wasn't going to cut it. He faced a critical business decision that would change wrestling forever: stay small and safe in the Northeast, or risk everything to create the first national wrestling promotion in history. McMahon's plan required breaking the sacred territorial system that had governed wrestling for decades. This system was basically a gentleman's agreement where promoters stayed in their own regions and didn't steal each other's talent. McMahon threw that agreement out the window and started aggressively recruiting talent from rival promotions across the country. His father had avoided this approach because of long-standing agreements among promoters. But McMahon Jr. was essentially declaring war on every other promotion in America. The masterstroke came in the form of Hulk Hogan, a blonde-haired, mustachioed vitamin salesman who somehow convinced an entire generation that flexing and praying could solve any problem. Hogan's catchphrases like, "Say your prayers and take your vitamins," became part of American culture, particularly among young fans. His appeal extended far beyond the wrestling ring, making him a pop culture icon of the 1980s who embodied everything McMahon wanted his company to represent. The business genius wasn't just Hogan's charisma, but McMahon's realization that wrestling could be packaged like any other consumer product and sold to the masses through MTV and cable television. The Rockin' Wrestling connection with MTV was a masterstroke that attracted a younger audience and integrated wrestling into mainstream culture. McMahon recognized the potential of cable television, which was a burgeoning medium at the time, to broadcast WWF programming across the United States. WrestleMania wasn't just a wrestling show. It was McMahon's declaration that sports entertainment could compete with mainstream entertainment. The first WrestleMania in 1985 featured celebrities like Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper, complete with production values that made other promotions look like community theater. This event drew nearly 20,000 fans and 1 million viewers at home, which was unheard of at the time. The success proved that McMahon's strategy of using pay-per-view events to draw revenue was working. The era's success came from understanding that Americans didn't want realistic wrestling. They wanted larger-than-life characters who embodied their fantasies about good versus evil. McMahon's calculated risk paid off because he recognized that the key to national success wasn't better wrestling, but better marketing and more accessible television distribution. The WWF created other major events like Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam, further establishing their dominance in the wrestling industry. The Golden Era proved that wrestling could be transformed from a niche sport into a mainstream entertainment empire through aggressive business expansion and shameless patriotic pandering. McMahon had discovered the formula for modern entertainment. Take something authentic, strip away the authenticity, and replace it with pure spectacle and marketing. But patriotic vitamin salesmen were just the warm-up. What comes next makes Hulk Hogan look like a sophisticated character study. We're talking about wrestlers whose entire identities were literally their day jobs. New Generation Era. The early 1990s saw WWE stumbling through its awkward teenage phase, where every creative decision seemed designed to answer the question, what if our wrestlers had day jobs? The steroid scandal hit WWE like a sledgehammer to the face, and when Hulk Hogan walked away from the company, McMahon was left scrambling to find a new identity for WWE. The investigation and trial of Vince McMahon cast a shadow over the company, even though he was acquitted. As a result, WWE had to distance itself from the heavily muscled physiques that had defined the Golden Era. The steroid scandal forced McMahon to reevaluate his entire roster and presentation. He needed to compete with WCW's deeper pockets, especially after Eric Bischoff started throwing money around like confetti at a wedding. WCW Monday. Nitro debuted in 1995 and directly challenged WWE's Monday Night Raw, which put even more pressure on McMahon to come up with something different. The solution was apparently to make wrestlers into literal occupational stereotypes, because nothing says sports entertainment like a garbage man fighting a dentist for championship gold. McMahon's business logic was that if fans couldn't relate to larger-than-life superheroes anymore, maybe they'd connect with characters who reminded them of their actual jobs. This explains why we got Duke the Dumpster Droz, a garbage man, and Isaac Yankem, a dentist with the worst bedside manner in history. The era also featured tax collectors, hockey players, and other workplace stereotypes that made the roster look like a rejected casting call for a workplace sitcom. The era's strangest success was Bret Hart, whose entire gimmick was being really good at wrestling. In the land of cartoon characters, this made him seem like a revolutionary concept. Hart's technical wrestling skills and in-ring storytelling carried the company through this challenging period. His feuds provided some of the era's most memorable matches, showing that sometimes the best gimmick is just being excellent at what you do. Shawn Michaels represented McMahon's attempt to create a new type of star, someone who could carry the company through pure athletic ability and charisma, even if his ego required its own zip code. Michaels earned the nickname the Heartbreak Kid, and his high-flying style stood out during this period. His business strategy was essentially throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. The King of the Ring pay-per-view highlighted the company's shift towards showcasing in-ring talent and new stars, even when the characters weren't connecting. What made this era profitable wasn't the ridiculous gimmicks, but McMahon's realization that wrestling fans would accept any character as long as the in-ring product remained entertaining. The era also saw the rise of unique characters like Goldust, whose androgynous persona pushed boundaries, and the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin's persona when he won the 1996 King of the Ring and coined the phrase Austin 316. The new generation era proved that WWE could survive even its most questionable creative decisions, as long as the underlying business structure remained sound. But you think a wrestling dentist was rock bottom? That was just WWE clearing its throat. What happened next was so gloriously unhinged that it turned a bald redneck into the biggest star in entertainment history. Attitude Era. The Attitude Era erupted like a beer-soaked rebellion against everything wholesome, transforming WWE into a testosterone-fueled circus where stunning your boss became a legitimate career strategy. What happened was, McMahon found himself facing potential bankruptcy and losing the Monday Night War to WCW, which had gained serious momentum with the NWO storyline. Former WWF stars like Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall had joined WCW and formed the NWO, which kind of like redefined wrestling, and put serious pressure on McMahon's company. McMahon needed a complete creative overhaul that would differentiate WWE from its competition. The gamble was going completely against family-friendly entertainment, risking sponsor relationships and mainstream acceptance for the chance to capture the elusive 18 to 34 male demographic. This shift was a calculated move to recapture audience interest and reclaim dominance in the wrestling landscape after years of declining ratings and stale storylines. Stone Cold Steve Austin became McMahon's accidental savior, a character whose entire appeal was doing everything employees fantasized about but could never actually do in real life. Austin's rebellious persona and feud with Mr. McMahon symbolized a rebellion against authority that resonated with fans who dealt with their own workplace frustrations. The chemistry between Austin and McMahon was described as magic, capturing the fans' imagination and helping WWE surpass WCW in the ratings war. The business brilliance wasn't just the edgy content, but McMahon's realization that he could make himself the villain, turning real-life corporate frustration into profitable entertainment. The Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series 1997, where Bret Hart was controversially defeated by Shawn Michaels, directly led to the creation of the villainous Mr. McMahon character. This real-life betrayal helped define the era's rebellious spirit and fueled the central Austin vs. McMahon storyline. The Rock proved that charisma could overcome any ridiculous storyline, somehow making third-person trash talk into an art form while generating massive merchandise sales. The Rock's electrifying promos and skills led to notable rivalries with Austin, Triple H, and Mankind. The Rock and Austin's rivalry would headline multiple WrestleManias and draw record ratings, establishing both as major stars. McMahon's strategy of pushing boundaries worked because he understood that controversy generates attention, and attention generates revenue, regardless of whether that attention is positive or negative. The Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Mankind at King of the Ring 1998, WrestleMania 14, with Mike Tyson as the special referee, was a pivotal moment that helped WWE regain its footing and eventually win the ratings war. The intense competition between WWE and WCW began to shift in WWE's favor as the Attitude Era attracted a broader audience and established WWE as a cultural phenomenon, if it served the business. But beer-chugging rebels were just the appetizer. How do you keep people watching when you've already won everything? McMahon's answer involved splitting his own company in half. Ruthless Aggression Era, literally buried alive as a form of conflict resolution. With WCW defeated and the wrestling landscape consolidated, McMahon faced the challenge of maintaining audience interest without the built-in drama of competition. The Monday Night Wars were over, and WWE had won. But that victory created a new problem. How do you keep fans engaged when there's no external threat to fight against? The solution was to create internal competition through the brand split, while simultaneously trying to elevate wrestling into more sophisticated entertainment, leading to some truly bizarre creative contradictions. In 2002, WWE divided its roster into two distinct brands, Raw and SmackDown, making fans believe that these shows were actually competing against each other. SmackDown got Paul Heyman as its creative director, and he emphasized in-ring quality and technical wrestling that stood out from Raw's approach. John Cena's transformation from rapper to superhero represented McMahon's ongoing struggle to create stars who could carry the company long-term, even if it meant completely abandoning successful character traits. Cena started as the Doctor of Thugonomics with his rap gimmick, But McMahon eventually turned him into a clean-cut superhero who appealed to kids and families. This change showed McMahon's willingness to sacrifice what worked in favor of what he thought would work better in the long run. The era's business strategy focused on developing homegrown talent rather than relying on established stars, which explains why we got Brock Lesnar as a monster and Triple H as a cerebral assassin who happened to marry the boss's daughter. Lesnar debuted in 2002 and immediately made an impact with his athleticism, quickly capturing the WWE Championship. The Evolution stable became central to Raw's storylines, with Triple H leading the group that included Ric Flair, Batista, and Randy Orton. McMahon's genius was recognizing that without external competition, WWE needed to create the illusion of internal competition. The SmackDown Six, including Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Edge, Rey Mysterio, and Chavo Guerrero, inherited success came from understanding that wrestling fans wanted more complex storylines, even if those storylines occasionally involved supernatural undertakers and demonic possession. Eddie Guerrero's journey to becoming WWE champion was a highlight of the era. With his emotional victory over Brock, he presented himself as a wealthy, arrogant heel, becoming SmackDown's top champion with feuds against Eddie Guerrero and John Cena. What made this era profitable wasn't the sophisticated storytelling, but McMahon's ability to maintain audience engagement through sheer volume of content and the promise that anything could happen. WWE experimented with different content types, including reality TV elements like Tough Enough and the WWE Diva Search, showing that the company was willing to try new approaches to keep fans interested. The Ruthless Aggression Era proved that WWE could maintain profitability even without major competition, as long as the product remained unpredictable and entertaining. But buried alive matches were nothing compared to the pressure Vince faced next. Advertisers wanted the blood and chaos gone, and somehow this led to the most polarizing character in WWE history: PG Era. The PG Era arrived like a corporate consultant's fever dream, transforming WWE into a sanitized entertainment product where John Cena became more unstoppable than a Disney princess with a musical number. What happened was McMahon found himself facing serious pressure from advertisers and shareholders who wanted WWE to clean up its image. The Chris Benoit tragedy in 2007 had cast a shadow over the company and increased scrutiny of WWE's practices, particularly regarding steroids and the depiction of violence on television, made it clear that change was necessary. McMahon needed to clean up WWE's image to attract mainstream sponsors and expand into new revenue streams. The challenge was maintaining audience engagement while removing all the edgy content that had made the Attitude Era successful, essentially performing creative surgery on the company's identity. This transition meant moving away from the explicit content, toning down language, and reducing the focus on muscular physiques that had defined previous eras. John Cena became McMahon's chosen vehicle for this transformation, a character so relentlessly positive and successful that he made Superman look like a pessimist with commitment issues. Cena's character was designed to appeal to a younger audience, which resulted in a significant boost in merchandise sales. His role as the face of WWE was critical during this period, and despite the softer tone, he remained a dominant figure in the company. Cena's feuds with Randy Orton, CM Punk, and The Rock were among the most notable during this era. The business logic was sound. Family-friendly content meant bigger sponsorship deals, more merchandise opportunities, and access to television time slots that weren't considered broadcasting wasteland. WWE recognized that while its core audience would likely remain loyal, family-friendly programming could attract new demographics and revenue streams, making the company more appealing to advertisers and expanding its overall reach. McMahon's strategy involved recognizing that wrestling's core audience would stick around regardless of content changes, while family-friendly programming could attract new demographics and revenue sources. The era's financial success came from understanding that predictable storytelling and safe characters were more valuable to advertisers than creative risk-taking and controversial content. The PG era didn't just face criticism. It created a generation of wrestling fans who felt abandoned. The anger went deeper than missing blood and profanity. Fans felt like WWE was lying to them, pretending this watered-down product was just as good while clearly prioritizing advertisers over the audience that had built the company. Every predictable Cena victory felt like another middle finger to fans who wanted to believe their voices mattered. CM Punk's pipe bomb became the era's most significant moment precisely because it represented everything the PG era was trying to avoid: unscripted passion and genuine controversy. Punk aired his grievances with WWE management during this seemingly unscripted speech, blurring the lines between fiction and reality. This promo resonated with fans, highlighting their growing discontent with WWE's product. The ultimate revelation was that McMahon had successfully transformed WWE into a corporate entertainment machine, where creative decisions were driven by boardroom discussions rather than audience passion. But corporate sanitization was just the prologue. That pipe bomb you just read about was about to blow up everything, literally creating an era where WWE turned its own dysfunction into entertainment and somehow made money off fans complaining about the product. The reality era emerged as WWE's collective therapy session, where the company finally acknowledged its own problems while somehow making those problems into entertainment content. What happened was, CM Punk's pipe bomb had shattered the fourth wall, forcing McMahon to confront the reality that fans were becoming increasingly aware of and frustrated with WWE's creative processes. Punk's unscripted speech in June 2011 aired his grievances with WWE management and blurred the lines between reality and storyline. Wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer described this moment as something that changed everything in WWE by incorporating real-life backstage issues into the on-screen narrative. The solution was to incorporate fan criticism and backstage reality into storylines, creating a meta-entertainment product that acknowledged its own artificiality while still trying to maintain dramatic tension. This approach was risky because it required WWE to admit that their product wasn't perfect while still trying to sell it as entertaining. The company started referencing backstage politics and creative decisions as part of their storylines, which was something they had never done before on such a large scale. Daniel Bryan's Yes movement represented the first time in years that fan passion had genuinely forced McMahon to change course. Bryan's organic connection with the fans reflected something deeper than wrestling preferences. It reflected their own feelings of being ignored, overlooked, and told their opinions didn't matter. When WWE tried to sideline Bryan despite overwhelming fan support, it felt personal to millions of viewers who saw their own workplace struggles reflected in his underdog story. Bryan's win wasn't just for him. It was for every fan who had screamed into the void, thinking WWE didn't care. His victory over Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista at WrestleMania 30 wasn't just a wrestling match. It was validation that fan passion could still override corporate planning. For the first time in years, WWE fans felt heard, felt important, felt like their voices could actually change something that mattered to them. The period's success came from understanding that wrestling fans were sophisticated enough to appreciate meta-commentary and behind-the-scenes insights, as long as those insights were packaged as entertainment. Fans were no longer satisfied with simple good versus evil storylines. They wanted to understand the business side of wrestling and feel like they were getting insider information about how decisions were made. The WWE Network's launch in 2014 represented McMahon's attempt to control the entire wrestling narrative, from current programming to historical revisionism, creating a comprehensive entertainment ecosystem. The network offered a vast library of past events, original programming, and live pay-per-views for a monthly subscription fee. This move towards digital distribution was a game-changer that allowed WWE to control its narrative and present its version of events while providing unprecedented access to WWE content. The reality era proved that WWE could turn its own creative struggles into profitable content, transforming corporate dysfunction into entertainment value. McMahon had discovered how to monetize fan frustration, creating a business model where even criticism and controversy became revenue-generating content. But when streaming changed everything and TV started dying, McMahon made a move that would transform wrestling into something completely unrecognizable: modern era. The modern era transformed WWE into a content factory where everything became sports entertainment, and part-time wrestlers somehow became more valuable than the people who showed up to work every day. With the WWE Network established and traditional television models changing, McMahon needed to adapt to a streaming-first entertainment landscape while maintaining traditional revenue streams. The network offered live events, original programming, and a vast library of past content for a monthly subscription. fundamentally shifting the company's revenue model away from traditional pay-per-view sales. The challenge was producing enough content to justify subscription services while dealing with an increasingly fragmented audience that consumed entertainment differently than previous generations. This move towards digital distribution was a game-changer, providing fans unprecedented access to WWE content and allowing the company to control its narrative and content distribution more directly. The reintroduction of the brand split in 2016, separating Raw and SmackDown into distinct rosters, was a key strategy in revitalizing interest and providing more opportunities for talent. Roman Reigns became McMahon's chosen face for this new era, a character pushed with the determination of a shopping cart with broken wheels, regardless of fan reaction or organic popularity. What happened was WWE consistently positioned him as the top star despite a divided fan base. Reigns' character transformation into the Tribal Chief in 2020, under the guidance of Paul Heyman, proved to be a masterstroke. Embracing his Samoan heritage and adopting a dominant heel persona, Reigns' feuds with the likes of Jey Uso, Drew McIntyre, and Brock Lesnar were critically acclaimed, solidifying his status as a top star and a major draw for the company. The business strategy involved treating wrestling like any other streaming content, prioritizing quantity and consistency over creative risk-taking or audience passion. McMahon's approach to part-time stars revealed his understanding that nostalgia and special appearances could generate more revenue than full-time character development, essentially turning wrestling into a reunion tour. This strategy prioritized convenience and accessibility for modern audiences, making the WWE Network and live events more important than individual storylines, as the presence of established stars often drew larger audiences. The era's profitability came from recognizing that modern audiences valued convenience and accessibility over creative excellence, making the WWE Network more important than any individual storyline. A key component of the modern era's financial strategy was the lucrative partnership with Saudi Arabia, commencing in 2018. This deal saw WWE hosting multiple events per year in the country, such as the Greatest Royal Rumble, demonstrating a clear prioritization of financial opportunities and global expansion. This was a calculated move, even if it meant potentially prioritizing these opportunities over the preferences of the domestic audience, as the shows were often met with mixed reactions from fans. The modern era proved that WWE had successfully transformed from a wrestling company into a content corporation, where business metrics mattered more than creative authenticity. The new era has been characterized by the blend of tradition and innovation, with WWE maintaining its core appeal while embracing new technologies and storytelling methods. The elevation of Roman Reigns, the continued focus on women's wrestling, and the company's resilience during the pandemic have defined this period. McMahon had achieved his ultimate goal, creating an entertainment empire so large and diversified that it could survive any creative failure or audience backlash through sheer corporate momentum. Every WWE era reveals the same truth. Vince McMahon's genius wasn't creating great wrestling, but understanding that audiences will accept any level of absurdity long as it's packaged with enough confidence and business savvy. From Bruno Sammartino's 8-year title reign to John Cena's unstoppable superhero run, each era proved that McMahon could sell anything to wrestling fans if he believed in it enough. The real legacy of WWE's evolution is proving that entertainment success comes from adapting to market demands rather than artistic vision, where even the most ridiculous creative decisions can become profitable with the right business strategy. So the next time you watch WWE and wonder how we got here, remember that every era was just another calculated business move in the beautiful, absurd empire of sports entertainment.